We have a couple of questions. There, I think, was one from yesterday, and maybe a few more may come. Please feel free. First of all, Henry mentioned yesterday that perspectives shift, life simplifies, and priorities can be clearer. Can anything further be said about this occurrence when our consciousness opens further? So Henry was asked about and speaking to this sudden shift, the sort of, if you look at this practice in terms of practice and principle, or the cart with two tracks, that gradual cultivation, and then the second track, often called awakening. And that would be a sudden shift. So asking, I appreciated Henry's response because it was just so genuine about human life and what can accompany that shift that is then ongoing in its deepening, clarifying cultivation. So my experience for myself and others, again and again, when these sudden shifts come, rather unbidden actually. One teacher says we can make ourselves fetchable, but you just never know. This tradition that we're practicing, this Chan Zen Mahayana, speaks about freedom and compassion, these sort of fundamental characteristics of this reality that is awakening, this, and also how our experience of it changes. I remember a teaching of Ryon Roshi with Mu that when he first said it, I wasn't so sure. I trust him so much. But he said, in a sense, practicing with Mu is forcing yourself to match your true self. And then, that's where he stopped. And one day I was just, it was the forcing part that I don't know. But, here's your practice in Mu, and just this one fact, and then in that unguarded moment, just that. So what does then come about? There are different ways of experiencing this, but the characteristics are so recognizable. The fact is so recognizable that when it happens, it's you just know this is true. And so freedom, compassion. One aspect of that freedom, this is often called the great relief. You might think I've been banging my head against this wall all this time, however 6 years long, how long it may be. And finally, there's no wall, there's no gate. That kind of relief. But it's, at least in my experience, more this great relief that you don't have to do anything or get anything or fix anything or add anything. It's really coming home to this, including all of these sort of quirks that in this case are named Valerie. We live with this kind of, I mentioned the inner critic, that constant process of measuring, weighing, sort of setting up that grid as if we're, looking through it. I remember a student, earnestly working on Mu and just, feeling like the vision was blocked, it's here, but and then you come to see, no, and it's all along. So, I think I've said this, but in my own experience, this freedom and also the compassion came from, or showed itself in this sense that, I had grown up with a very, in a family that talked about unconditional love, not obsessively, but that was a value for, of course, this family, but for the world. And so I thought, wow, what a wonderful thing, this quality, this unconditional love. What might that be like? And how fitting that I should live in the world toward others with this unconditional love, and that others should, receive unconditional love. I mean, everything else is just an accident of birth, but for all of that, sense of this, I mean, I remember when I went off to college, it was this really competitive conservatory of music, and my mother sent me off with this little, index card with some sentence she'd written about unconditional love. And I stuck it there in the corner of the dormitory mirror every day. Wonderful, but not quite fitting for me. Like that question today that Mara puts to the Buddha, what right do you have to sit in this seat? It just, not quite. There's that little gap. Couldn't be. Somehow I have to deserve something. And, that very first shift, which for me came rather early on and was therefore, not as deep as others. Just enough, though. A great relief. But one way it showed itself was suddenly, unconditional love isn't something you have or get or give. It's what you are. The sutras are full of this, but until somehow, like tasting it, like that proverbial tasting the cup of tea, tasting the tea, you just can't get it. And I say this a lot, we're soaking in the thing we seek. And that comes out of my own experience also, these beautiful chants and songs and sutras. From the beginning, all beings are Buddha. Like water and ice, without water, no ice. Outside us, no Buddhas. Nothing outside us. This is what I felt like this case zero is just broadcasts to us just this message, as Roshi says, this message from the oneness world. So with this comes a sense of freedom and compassion. Another aspect of that freedom is, fundamentally this one that we set up and identify with, that separate self, that separator. It just somehow isn't there in the way that we thought. I think, for Shakyamuni Buddha, what happened? You could say, he's gone. In that I alone, there's nothing like that separate I. So, in a more simple way, more down to earth, more, just this tasting that we can do and keep working at. There is this quality, really, that all these things are happening and no one is doing anything. And even when that gets a little sticky, as it will, as dust comes up, keep practicing. It doesn't have the same hold. It just doesn't. So, wow, this effort I'm making, this thing I want to do, it's just not coming the way I want it to. And yet, in some fundamental way, it's just okay. It is okay. It will be okay. Also, just one more word about this compassion. Really, the support I've been talking about, we talk about, it's everywhere we turn, and it becomes much more apparent. And those lines that might have been there where you could carve something out and judge it, they just don't hold up. It doesn't mean, there's this wonderful koan from the Diamond Sutra, if once in this lifetime you're despised, it puts everything to rest. All of your karmic sins are resolved. You idiot! But when you see this world, it's like, that's it. And out of this wellspring of compassion, which is simply what this is, all of this, that there is anything. Of course, the flowers, the Buddha, the candle, each one here, but also the muck and the virus and the suffering and the division and the horrible mess we're in. That it is at all. We have to address it, but there's still another level where that is just so transparent, and it's compassion. And it makes you want to do all you can. So, I started to say these shifts, they come and they make us say, now my practice can begin. So that's every time, every breath, every time we sit down. It's not dependent on, experiencing a big shift. But anyway, that's probably more than needed saying. Valerie, I'm having to lie on my back a lot this sesshin. Any help with doing that is great. In particular, what to do with the hands. Yeah, this lying down can be very helpful for folks with back trouble, just skeletal issues. And you can absolutely practice sitting, standing, walking, lying down. So the invitation there is just like in our sitting, straightforward and at ease. Relaxed and alert. Where's that balance? So about the hands, I would experiment and find the position that takes, brings that sense of poise with the least possible pressure on the back. So when I'm doing this myself, I found just lying with my hands face down at my side somehow helps me stay straightforward, this poise. But I think you could find anything that works for you. I wouldn't necessarily be looking at a mudra. Experiment with it. It's just this balance, straightforward and at ease. And no problem to lie down. Can be quite strong. If it's, you can tell immediately if the balance is off because you'll fall asleep. So, like when we're sitting in this mudra, this cosmic mudra, one of the benefits of it is that if you have some tension in your body, you might just notice your thumbs are pushing into each other. And if you're getting, off the other side, just kind of the sloth and torpor are too relaxed, they'll fall apart a little. And that can be a very quick cue. So I would look for those cues to balance in lying down. Does ing imply the light of awareness, much as in seeing, feeling, hearing? If so, when there was the seeing of the morning star, do you think that the Buddha recognized something about awareness? And if so, what? Awareness is, I'm suddenly wishing Henry were talking. I just heard that. For me, I know there's a lot that can be very helpful. This one awareness, this all-pervading awareness. I feel when the Buddha, when the way I put it, the light of his eyes met the light of the star. I like that because it's not. It's a little more clear to me than saying seeing. Ing in the sense of being, perhaps, but he disappeared. So this wonderful koan, I might talk about it. Who hears, or who sees, who feels. So yeah, then maybe you get into the arena where awareness could be a helpful word. But when I use that word, I this is just personal. I feel like there's still something there. Like we find a way to say, well, almost to thingify awareness, and that just my own little way of seeing it. I know this can be so helpful. But yeah, this experience of sound or shining or a gesture I mean, do you want to say that's awareness? Okay. It's, I get into this suddenly, I just love that this is the way of not knowing, or before knowing, you know. And I have the feeling maybe Henry could speak to this a little bit tomorrow. If the Buddha recognized something about awareness, everything fell away. This boundless shining, this one luminous transparency. But those words just, including awareness, for me. I'm not sure if there's a lot of interaction between practitioners at Mountain Cloud between sessions, or if it's encouraged or discouraged by Henry. But if this is a part of the retreat experience in person, I wonder if a breakout room for breaks, meals, rests might be beneficial for remote practitioners to be able to interact and relate to one another between sessions if they choose. Just a thought. So we are absolutely intimately interacting without a sound, a word, without eye contact. I mean, occasionally it just, there's a moment, a little whisper. But this great, great intimacy of silence. And that has a different quality with this online experience. This is part of how Henry, I mean, I don't mean to speak for you, but I've heard you say, and I've experienced exploring how to convey, of course, the Dharma, but also this shared space. It's so powerful to do this in silence with one another. Like I mentioned Vimalakirti, this silence heard around the world. Maybe that was the other night. Sorry. And so maybe, a way to generate, cultivate, create the space for a deeply shared, retreat experience online might include some of these. We are looking at this, ferreting it, figuring it, like even today, the spontaneous Q&A, the question to, for whom here is this a first or new? And then right away, an opportunity together. So finding the way as we go. But it would be a correlate to this gift of shared silence. That is as much a part of this sesshin, this touching the heart, this woman standing. I love that. As is sitting, any part of it. It's all of a piece. Why does one cry or laugh during meditation? I think there are really different reasons. Sometimes it can be, grief or all kinds of human pain that can come up in the courage of sitting with oneself and with things just as they are. There can be a release. It can also be, tears of joy, the laughter of freedom just wells up. We try to be respectful in a zendo, but this it's just to sit with things as they are, and then as perhaps some of these they're artifices, but we experience them as these bindings or blinders, and including the crust on our heart. Henry's been talking about tenderizing, or this, sweetness to the pummeling, he said last night. As these fall away or become more porous, more tender, well, for one thing, there's a huge release of energy. Can be. It takes so much energy to hold it all in place. And when that grid starts to give way or just become more and more transparent, or to fall in a way you see, well, it's never really there, there's no substance. And suddenly the energy that it took to hold it is just unleashed. And there is great joy and also amazement. People experience this in different ways, but it's not unusual for that kind of tears and laughter. And neither is it unusual for our emotional body to open up while sitting. Understood. Maybe nonverbal is a bit more difficult remotely. Thank you for sharing about the shared experience at Mountain Cloud. Yeah, but still, thanks for the question, because this is a new world, and it's a remarkable gift of this brutal pandemic. That the walls we thought were solid are just, the spaces we thought couldn't be crossed, somehow linked. Whoa. So, ever unfolding, as is the Dharma. There was a question in the chat yesterday, but speaking just a word that came up for me around this question of our hybrid experience, which is, all of us together are exploring, finding. But when I was kind of pondering this ahead, just in the couple of days leading up to this, we were in this Zendo quarantining here, and with the help of Joe and Luke, and Mark from afar, all this wonderful support team, figuring out camera placement and lights and sound, and and also how we could most support the people in this room and every single one. And then, I had this wonderful moment where it just flipped and the support was just pouring in. But I was pondering just somehow this word hybrid. And in a former season of my life, I was a graduate student and then worked at a university, graduate school, and at large in the conversation, this postmodern world, post-colonial world. It doesn't matter if that's not the water you swim in, but hybridity is talked about a lot, and it really was a term that was used to kind of crack open and decenter our notion of identity as a binary in any sense. So what does it look like when you take not two into something that seems so fixed in its dualism, like language and identity and cultures and art. And so this wonderful, the discipline calls it complexifying, but we talk so much about simplifying, but complexifying, is really different from complicating. It's this multitudes, I mean, I was sitting with this and thought of Walt Whitman. I think it was, I contain multitudes. Zen wouldn't put it that way, maybe. But it's pointing to these 10,000 myriad things. And also just this beautiful multivalence that might be a way for us to think about this and really dissolve any sense of here and out there. Forget that. But then see, where's the richness? I mean, I know that's just kind of a point or a model, but it rather delighted me when in part because it was like, oh, this life has some connection to that time when I thought about things like that. But the beauty of hybridity, the creativity, and it's very like Zen in that it's subversive. Whatever we think we know, whatever we think is fixed somehow, this practice, this Dharma will just already overturned, already, constantly on the move, this great dynamism. And that can feel so unsettling, but it's also so generative, creative. And so it's an invitation to us to find what the Dharma has to say about this way of being together. Just one more word, if there is, if I can find it. You spoke to that. I'm sorry, the print is so small, I'm not really finding it. I'll look at this again, and if it comes around, speak to it another time. So, thank you all. Yeah. I just was remembering that poem from Clark Strand, about this green koan that, for ordinary folk, sentient beings, how'd he put it? There's in and out, there's here and there. But within awakening, you can't even throw a stone out of this world. There's no place. So that's the invitation to us, this one world. And it's this, as I like to say, there's no other emptiness. There really is no other. This earth, this body. So thank you for the questions and for embodying the Dharma together as Sangha.